Support for this News from Lake Wobegon podcast comes from the Sleep Number bed by Select Comfort, the bed that lets you adjust the mattress firmness to your preference, your sleep number. And by Honey Nut Cheerios cereal. Made with whole grain oats, Honey Nut Cheerios cereal can help lower your cholesterol. Honey Nut Cheerios. Be happy, be healthy. Well, it's been a quiet week in Lake Wobegon, Minnesota, my hometown. Out on the edge of the prairie. It was sort of cool there early in the week, and then it got warm. Again, the fireflies were out by the billions. You could look out your window at night and see them, and the full moon as well, the sort of moon that wakes people up in the middle of the night. They get up out of bed to close the shades, and by the time they get to the window, they're filled with all sorts of thoughts they didn't mean to have. You think back on your life, and you think back on what you've done and what you didn't do, and you think about the future, which you really at your age should not be thinking about. But the moon is pouring in through the window, and you think about that moment in adult Bible class. It was just 2 weeks ago when you were going to speak up. There was a moment of silence there. And you were going to say that you really truly believe down in your heart that God does not condemn his children, but it just seemed too bald a statement to make. And so you were trying to think of how to explain it or what to add to it or how to explain it, sitting there in adult Bible class among all of those people dressed in their Sunday clothes, and then other people who were deliberately not dressed in Sunday clothes, believing that God will not condemn them for this. They come in ordinary clothes and shorts and T-shirts. You were just about to say this, that God's kindness is endless. You've come to believe in this. And then Val Tollefson changed the subject and said it was time to talk about discipleship, which was our other topic today. And that moment was lost. You never said what you were going to say, and now you may not even think it again. The whole thing may have disappeared from your life. You get to the window and you almost pull the shade. You have all of these late night 3 a.m. thoughts. Judy Inkvist, the pastor's wife, woke up at 2 a.m, the bright moon shining in. And she remembered the dream that she just had. She was walking barefoot across the grass on a summer night, and a deer walked up to her, which at first she thought was a cast iron deer, but it was a real deer. And the deer spoke to her and talked about its very disappointing life and how it had been abandoned by its father as a small child and had been hunted down, running panicked through the woods. And then a voice said, "If you think that's something, listen to my story." And she turned, and it was their old dog, Björn, their old dog, talking about his unhappy life with them and how he was never understood. He was never loved for who he was. They just used him for their own purposes. She remembered all of it standing there. She looked out, and in the moonlight, you could see little blades of grass moving slowly. The turtles moving from their homes near the water, moving into their nesting grounds. Turtles migrating in the night. Here a turtle, there's a flock of them over there, painted turtles, snapping turtles, box turtles, all moving to lay their eggs in the grass, moving inexorably, slowly on. The old Norwegian bachelor farmer, Mr. Hauge, who had a cow in his basement, he has now gotten the cow out of the basement, so there's one less thing to talk about at the Chatterbox Cafe. He got this cow, it was an orphan calf, and he picked it up last spring. It seemed to be close to death. It was convenient to keep it in the cellar, and so he put it down there, and then postponed taking it out to the pasture. And meanwhile, the calf grew to become a cow, and it became too large to go up the stairs any longer. This has happened to you, it's happened to me. You postpone a big job, and the big job just gets bigger and bigger, and the basement is strewn with stuff you would rather not even think about. He was sitting out on his porch wondering what to do about this cow in his basement, which people are talking about. And he saw a turtle moving across the yard, moving slowly, very deliberately, crawling, hauling itself over branches and over rocks. And then it came to the big pile of empties that Mr. Hauge has left out there, and it began scratching and scritching up this pile of empty bottles. He went and he lifted it up and he carried it over, and it moved on its pilgrimage, doing what it must do. He was inspired by this to go and borrow a backhoe. And now Mr. Hauge's house is a split-level house. Something he'd never intended, and he's beginning to clean out what the cow left behind down there in the basement. It was a difficult week for the Magandance family. They forgot to check their air conditioner for mice or rats before they hooked it up, and they started to run it. And sure enough, they started it up on a hot day last week, and all these scurrying sounds and chopping sounds, and by the time they could unplug it, they had ushered these little critters, they had pureed them, they had ushered them into the great kaleidoscope of eternity. They had to wash out the air conditioner in the backyard, flush it with water and soap, and still animal parts came sluicing out of it. They took it apart, they flooded it with water, and then of course it wouldn't work. And so they had to clean out their garage and put screens against the open door and sit out there in the garage, what we call a Polish porch. And they sat there. Neighbors could see. The neighbors knew the whole story. They got into trouble with Sister Arvon at Our Lady of Perpetual Responsibility, where they had the rummage sale last week. Friday and Saturday were the collection days, and the rules on this are very clear. You are not supposed to bring large pieces of furniture there. And Arvon stood guard until midnight on Friday night, and she came in on Saturday, and here was an enormous, ugly purple couch. She recognized this as the Magandance's couch, the one they had in their basement for years, the one that the dog slept on and died on. She called and she told them, "This must go." They said, "What couch?" She said, "Don't lie to a nun. Don't even think about it. This is your couch. Come, take this away." They said, "As soon as we get the garage cleaned out, we will." It was a tough week for them. The Lake Wobegon Whippets played the Avon Bards last Sunday evening. Played them, and were doing pretty well. Ernie, the old knuckleballer, the knuckleball was working pretty well for him, and he was throwing a new pitch, what he calls a snowball. It's a kind of a really high pitch. It comes through the strike zone vertically, actually, and confused a lot of batters, but took a long time pitching that way, and so the game went on and on. They were only 3 runs behind in the middle of the 7th inning when people stand for the 7th inning stretch and they sing "Take Me Out to the Ball Game," and also a song in Norwegian that nobody understands, but we believe that it started out as a song about the king and the queen of Norway, and now is a very dirty song, but nobody knows what it means, so it's okay to sing it. We stood and we sang it, and the umpire got a strange look in his eye, and he called the managers over, and he said he was very sorry. He didn't think this was going to happen, but his pager had gone off, and his wife had gone to the hospital to have a baby. This had just never happened before in the old sod shanty league. Always the umpires were so ugly you could never imagine them having babies, or anybody they knew having babies. But he went off, and so they looked over the crowd, the Whippets did, and they spotted Father Wilmer sitting out there in the bleachers. He could see that they had spotted him, and he ducked down. He tried to escape, and he tried to get away, but they snagged him as he was going out the exit. They said, "Please do this. Just please. You're the only one who can umpire this game. Please, just do this for us. We can't call off the game on account of this." He said, "I don't understand baseball." They said, "Don't worry. If there's a problem, we'll help you. will explain it to you. He said, I don't understand the infield fly rule. They said, it's not a problem. So he put on the big chest pad, and he put on the face mask, and he stood behind the plate to call balls and strikes. The Avon Barnes had this big, wild fastballer, and this kid out there on the mound with a strange motion. He would stand, and then he'd cock his right leg up, and he looked as if he was reaching for a bar of soap in the shower, and then slipping and falling forward, and then the arm came sidearm, and in came this pitch. The first one ticked off Wayne Tommerdahl's bat and just went zoom, right past Father Wilmer's right ear. He just was stunned, still trying to think of the infield fly rule. He called a few strikes, and then an outfielder waved to him from left field and was pointing down at the grass, and Father Wilmer walked out there. And it was a controversial call, but nonetheless, he made it. It was the first game in the history of the league to be called on account of turtles. There were about 20 of them moving across the outfield slowly, and there seemed to be more on their way. It was Holy Trinity Sunday at Lake Wobegon Lutheran Church last Sunday, and it was that Sunday out of the year when Pastor Inkvist has to explain the concept of the Trinity, which is never easy under the best circumstances. And when the air conditioning hasn't been turned on yet, and the windows are open and people can hear motorboats out on the lake, it's very difficult to explain the triune God, the Father, the Son, the Holy Ghost. He did his best, and then right after church he had to go into St. Cloud to the hospital to visit Val Tollefson, who had been taken in sick 2 nights before. It seemed to be meningitis, and so the volunteer fire department brought in the ambulance, and they put him on the gurney, and they wheeled him in, and they headed off down the road. And then they were bumping along on a gravel road. The sick man said, why are you not taking the pavement? They said, well, there's a whole line of turtles crossing the county road there, so we're just driving. He said, what if I were critically ill? Would you still give yield to turtles instead of me? Well, they said, we just figured you weren't that bad off. He said, is that why you're not using the siren? Yes, they said. They got back onto the state highway, and they had to stop again. There was a car parked. There was a man who was scraping the family cat off the pavement, and 4 children standing near him, weeping their eyes out. Puff had jumped out of an open window because a child had almost sat on the cat, and he had been struck by a cattle truck, and there he was, flat like a frisbee. The man was weeping too. He said, can you take my children with you in the ambulance? I just can't bear it anymore. He said, I just can't bear it. Take them with you. So they did. They took the children, and the children cheered up as soon as they got into the ambulance, and as soon as the firemen turned on the siren. It was really a lot of fun. They raced through the streets of St. Cloud. They took the long way to the hospital, driving back and forth with the siren on. The children forgot all about their cats. Val felt a little better the next day. Pastor Inkvist came to see him, and Val said, when I thought I was dying, there was something I was going to confess to you. But now that I'm not sure. What is it? Said Pastor Inkvist. Val said, well, all of these years, going back as far as I can remember, when we said the Apostles' Creed, I refused to say Holy, Apostolic, and Catholic Church. I just couldn't say Catholic Church. I just couldn't make myself do it. I read Fox's Book of Martyrs as a child. I know what they did to us and to our people. I just couldn't do it. That's all right, said Pastor Inkvist. God looks on your heart. God forgives. God is unendingly merciful and kind.
Val said, so it doesn't matter then that I didn't say Catholic Church? No, it's all right. Okay, he said, then to hell with them. I won't ever say it again. It turned out just to be colon blockage, what they call in medical circles now what we used to call constipation. It was just too many helpings of fruit pasta delight at the wedding supper 2 weeks ago, and it just stopped him right up. They gave him a whole cup of mineral oil, and it cleared up the problem in a memorable way that you do not want me to describe to you. And he was taken home. Meanwhile, the turtles continue to make their progress across the gardens and through the yards. The turtles who are stopped only by walls, stone walls, and then often a kind person will come and lift them over the wall, and they continue their journey. Although to a turtle it must be exhilarating too, that brief moment of flight when invisible fingers lift you up and suddenly you're able to see farther than you ever dreamed possible. You have a great vision that now you can tell other turtles about, and you are set down to continue on your way, just as you and I, just as happens to us every single day, every week of our lives. Invisible hands are lifting us up and holding us and setting us down in a new place from which we continue on. That's the news from Lake Wobegon, where all the women are strong, all the men are good looking, and all the children are above average.
The News from Lake Wobegon podcast is brought to you by Honey Nut Cheerios cereal. Made with whole grain oats, Honey Nut Cheerios cereal can help lower your cholesterol. Honey Nut Cheerios. Be happy, be healthy. Hello, it's Garrison Keeler from A Prairie Home Companion, hoping you're having a good summer. We're going to have a wonderful summer at A Prairie Home with our big rhubarb tour, visiting state fairs and traveling all over the country with Susie Bogus, Fred Newman, the Guys All-Star Shoe Band, Guy Noir, Private Eye, the News from Lake Wobegon, and so forth. For ticket information, you can visit us at prairiehome.org. The show we've always wanted to do, so we hope we'll see you this summer.